and welcome back to another episode of Write.Publish.Connect. My name is Alexa Nazaro, founder of the Aaxel Author Group. Today we are talking to another one of the authors with whom we've had the pleasure of collaborating. I'm happy to introduce you to Jerry Sanders. Jerry recently published his book, An Underground Conspiracy, and he's here today to just chat a little bit about his experience writing the book and the indie author journey. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks so much. So let's start with the actual book itself. Why don't you give us a bit of an overview of what An Underground Conspiracy is about?
Okay, the book is actually the third book in a trilogy, beginning with Between Heaven and Hell, followed by Servant of Duty, and then Underground Conspiracy. And it involves a protagonist who began in the first book as someone who became demon possessed, and he spent the rest of that book and part of the next trying to get exercise from these demons. But in the process, the demonic possession gave the man extraordinary abilities, uh, perfect memory, abilities to plan, to fight with swords, because it's a medieval tale. And it gave him a ability to draw his concepts and to use that in the planning process. And when it comes to the third book, he is now without any special powers given to him by the once demons that he had. But he still has residual effects from those abilities. And he discovers a plan by accident that involves most of the known world. He discovers underground a sect of Jews known as the Ashkenazi, who are a brilliant sect of people. And he discovers that they wish to reap some kind of havoc to be able to get back at the world because of their persecution over millennium. And they intend on taking over the above ground world. And my protagonist is going to try and stop them from doing that because it will involve not only taking over most of the world, but killing a lot of people. And so he has endeavored to do that, but in the process, he is captured, found out, and then he eventually escapes. But in the process, the Ashkenazi now are tracking him all over the world to get back at him because he cannot expose them and their desire to take over the known world.
Okay. Are you planning on continuing this saga in some way with other books?
No, that will be the end of the trilogy. It ends there. Uh, I have finished one other book. It's a 1940s New Orleans gangster novel.
Mm,
I finished it, have not published it.
okay.
And I'm currently working about two-thirds of the way through a Western taking place in the 1860s.
Oh,
And and so I've got some other ideas, a time travel book that will have more than one story.
nice. So you're quite prolific. Let's talk about the trilogy and what your experience was like writing that series. How long, how many years of writing are we talking about from book one through to An Underground Conspiracy?
Oh, probably 5 years.
Okay. All right. That's still pretty quick. That's a good speed. What would be some tips that you would give to writers who are writing their own series?
Well, I found out during the writing of mine that it required a lot of research because I'm writing in the 1200 medieval period.
Yeah.
And unless they're writing something they're very familiar with, and of course, it's always recommended that if somebody's writing, write what you know about, and you can't know about unless you either experience it or have done a lot of research. And that's what I learned in doing writing these three medieval books. I had to find out, what kind of birds did they have in the area? What kind of food did they eat? What were the clothing like and so forth. So if you're writing a period other than the period that you live in, it requires a lot of research to be authentic in your writing.
And what was that research like for you? Where did you turn for references and resources?
Well, at first I used books. I had the chronicles of the period that took place during the 11, 1200 periods. From it takes place in England, or at least begins in England. And so I had chronicles that were written by monks and other people during the period, and that was a real valuable resource for me. And then, of course, the internet. Thank God for the internet because it gives us a limitless amount of areas to look at that that gave people an idea what the customs were back in the day and so forth. So yeah, I use many different references, and a lot of it is my own imagination.
Oh. And how much research would you say you did before embarking on book one?
Well, interesting enough that when I started it, I started writing. And I wrote a chapter, and then that's when I discovered, well, I didn't know enough about the everyday things. And so I began I spent the next year of looking at things and copying things and making notes and so forth. And after I did all that, then I had a basis to really begin the story because when you're writing a story, it's good to, I think, to incorporate some background things that's taking place. What kind of food are you drinking? What kind are the that you're drinking, and the clothes you're wearing, and so forth. So that's why I needed the research, and that's why it took so long to do it.
What was the editing process like for you? So many writers discover that, oh, I have my first draft, but maybe this isn't the one that's going to be eventually published. What was the editing and revision process like for you?
Well, after I finished the book, and a tip was given to me that when you're writing a book, don't edit your book while you're writing. Write the entire book or you'll never finish it. And so I did that. I wrote the whole book and then I went back and started rereading it and started making changes. And I did that 10 times. And I got tired of reading my book after 10 times. Uh, and then after I finished it, got it to a point where I liked it. I sent it to someone I knew that was good at grammar check because grammar is not my forte. And so I sent it to her and had her do a grammar check. And then after that, I sent it to a company that does editing, and they did a developmental edit for me and they made a few suggestions. And I also sent the book to 10 people that were friends, and I asked them to read the book and to give me their thoughts on it. And then I incorporated all that information into the book, the first book, and the second and third book were similar.
Mhm. Okay, sounds like a very thorough process. So you even use beta readers, those 10 friends, we would call those beta readers essentially. So they just read your book and give you some of their own critique about their reading
Yes,
experience. So that was all you really were thorough on that. That's excellent.
yes.
What was perhaps the biggest writing mistake that you found you made during your writing?
Well, the first book, the biggest mistake that I found out was it was too long.
Mm,
It's 650 pages roughly. And the developmental editor asked me to break it into two books, and I couldn't do that. Other people that read it said it's too long.
mm,
And so the next two books are half that. They're like
okay.
275 pages. And I think that's a much more readable, more people, would be interested in reading a smaller book.
Okay. So now everything's been done, the manuscript has been polished. Why don't you talk a little bit about your publishing journey, your decision to publish yourself, your decision to be an independent author, and what advice you would give for other people looking to publish their own work as opposed to trying to get an agent, waiting for that agent to sell the manuscript, etc.
Well, I have heard a lot of horror stories about getting published. I have a friend who's also a writer. He has been to several conferences and that talk about publishing, and he found through these conferences that it's virtually impossible to get an agent and get published. It's like 1%, I've heard. And so my goal was not to make $1 million, not to get world famous, but just to publish a book and give it to my family, my children, grandchildren, and friends. And so I just wanted to publish. So I went with a publisher and a self-publishing publisher, and they published the first two books of the trilogy for me. And then when it came to the third book, I wanted to see how other publishing companies operate and work. And that's when I did a lot of research and found Actual Author Group. And so I went with them and was very pleased with the response, the feedback, and the work that Stefan has done with the Actual Author Group.
So, speaking of research, because your research was so thorough in preparing for writing your manuscripts, what would you say are some of the things that authors should look out for when they're doing their own research for publishing partners like the Aaxel Author Group and the others that are out there?
Well, there's a lot of different things that different publishing companies offer. Like the first two that did my first two books, they offered a certain amount, and while that may be sufficient for some people, I wanted a little bit more exposure because the first two books I got very little in terms of sales. And so that's why I went with a different group to see how they operated, so I would have a more marketing. And if marketing is important to you to get the book beyond friends and family, then you need a company that does marketing at least to some degree, and that's why I went with Actual Group because they did more. They have a wider audience, more book sales companies and that sort of thing. And so, I would suggest that you people writing for the first time do the research because I found out that there are literally hundreds of self-publishing companies out there, and I have looked at reviews on a lot of them, and so many of them are virtually scams. So above everything, do a lot of research, check references, and check comments and complaints. It's a must.
And so on the theme of, of advice and whatnot, let's finish off this conversation by you sharing one last bit of advice or maybe a sense of encouragement for other authors who are out there, whether they're trying to survive their first draft or they're ready to get published or they have been published. What kind of remaining thought do you want to leave with them today?
Well, I would say keep on keeping on, which means write a little bit every day. Some days you have more time, you can do more, but they will discover after a while that writing is very, very fulfilling. At least it was for me. And the more I write, the more I want to write. And I don't think that's unique. I think that's probably something that's prominent in most writers. It's self-fulfilling. And so don't give up and get to the end. And I tell you that there's nothing like getting that first book back that's been published and holding that book in your hand. for me, it was a wonderful feeling. And so I encourage everyone to keep up and keep doing it.
Thanks so much for those thoughts, Jerry, and for a really interesting conversation. I think we covered a lot of critical steps in the writing and publishing process, and you're clearly a prolific writer, so you gave a lot of good quality advice. Thanks so much for being with us today on Write.Publish.Connect, and all the best for your future writing endeavors.
Thank you, Alexa.